Here to break down an eventful week around the state capitol is Jessie Opoien from the Cap Times. Thanks as always, Jessie.
Glad to be here.
Let's start with shared revenue. There's bipartisan support for increased funds. They even seem to agree on the 1-cent sales tax concept, but these provisions we heard about this week, this could get very contentious about those, right?
Yeah, we saw the proposal that came from legislative Republicans written in consultation with local Democratic leaders in Milwaukee. I think when you hear from those Democratic leaders in Milwaukee, it's not, 100% what they'd like it to be. And that's probably the case for those who wrote it too. But it gets at things. It increases shared revenue for the entire state. Every community would get at least a 10% boost, but most communities would see quite a bit more than that. And for Milwaukee in particularly, this gets at addressing their unfunded pension liability, but it does come with a few strings attached, which to the contention point, Governor Evers did say that if he doesn't see some adjustments, removing some of those restrictions on local control, he's inclined to veto it.
You mentioned the veto possibility there. Are Republicans showing any signs of flexibility, though, at this point?
Well, I think everyone's been pretty flexible throughout the process. And it's been a lot of back and forth. Everyone who's been working on it's been working very hard behind the scenes. We've only really seen the surface level of this. So sure, I think there's flexibility, but the Republican leadership put out a statement yesterday that said they're disappointed in hearing that veto threat from the governor, but they asked him to work with them on the bill before it goes before the assembly floor.
The Joint Finance Committee also meeting this week. They've scrapped more than 500 items for the governor's budget. Any of those items surprise you?
No surprises at all there. This is what Republicans have done on the Joint Finance Committee since Governor Evers was elected. He introduces his budget. They take a look at it. They scrap pretty much the entire proposal and they start over from the ground up. So no big surprises there. And looking at policy items, kind of those big ticket items like marijuana legalization kind of being one of the big ones, paid family leave being another big one. Not surprised based on what we heard from Republicans when the budget was introduced in the first place that those wouldn't make it through. What we're hearing from the Joint Finance Committee members, Republicans at least, is that those items should be reintroduced as separate pieces of legislation. In terms of other cuts or other agencies that they've started to address, it hasn't really been any really headliners, I guess, at this point. So pretty early in the process.
You sat down with Speaker Robin Vos this week. He had some interesting things to say about the Republican National Convention coming to Wisconsin, didn't he?
He did. He said it's going to be good for the state of Wisconsin, but he's not so sure yet whether it's going to be good for the Republican Party of Wisconsin. And I think a lot of that hinges on whether Donald Trump is the nominee. He talked to me about his concerns with that. He says, whether you like him or not, he certainly, said there were things that the president did, that Donald Trump did, that Robin Vos liked, but he doesn't see an ability for Donald Trump to win the state of Wisconsin or any other swing states like it. Donald Trump is someone who fires up the Republican base, but Robin Vos said he doesn't see Donald Trump bringing more people over to the Republican Party or, maybe even winning people back who left in the last few years.
Anything else stand out from that chat you had, which was 20-some minutes with Robin Vos this week?
It was just a good chat talking about his policy priorities, talking about kind of his efforts to hit the reset button with Tony Evers. They've been meeting. He said they've met more in the last few months than they have in the first few years that Evers was in office. And that sense of bipartisanship is coming through at the legislative level as well. The assembly leadership on both parties had a bipartisan leadership retreat a few weeks ago. So maybe a sign of fresh new look forward.
The other major storyline this week is the opening arguments in that abortion case involving Attorney General Josh Kaul. This is just the beginning of a very long process, isn't it? We really haven't gotten a feel as to what's going to happen as this moves forward yet.
Yeah, that's right. This was just oral arguments on a motion to dismiss the case. So kind of really first steps forward in that. And we're all still expecting this to end up before the state Supreme Court. The question is, does it end up there in the next couple months, or does it end up there in August when the court has a liberal majority once Janet Protasiewicz is sworn in?
Do you think it would actually be an advantage to the Democratic Party if this is stalled all the way through the election through 2024?
It's certainly proven to be a motivating issue for Democratic voters and some independents and even some moderate Republicans. So I think there's always the question of achieving the policy that you want and being able to show that you can get a win versus being able to hold it out there and say, this is the threat of electing more Republicans. It could definitely be a motivating issue.
We certainly had a lot to talk about this week, so I appreciate the time here, Jessie Opoien, once again.
Thanks.